to that condition, 7.36, is this is also an extreme invasion of privacy. Under no circumstance will city staff have access to noise-aware device, sound measurements. If complaints are received, the applicant, including any property owners or managers and the designees, shall use his or her best judgment and best management practices to ensure the commercial activities on the premises will be conducted in a manner that will not be disruptive to neighbors and will take necessary measures to bring the noise level down if needed. Now, I think that last portion, I think she's recommending that condition 7.36 be replaced with that language, and we can talk a little bit further during the discussion about that. Let's see. And now I'm going to read a statement letter from the applicant as well. So good evening. I first want to start off by saying thank you for taking this time to review my project, and I am so grateful to finally be in this position. I have worked diligently since April 2019 to get all of this information to you and satisfy the planning department. This project is for my business, New Thought Montessori, a very small daycare / preschool, and is going to benefit the coastal community greatly. Our program is for ages 2.5 and 6 years old and is extremely peaceful, engaging, and organized. I have my first very successful location in Lake Forest. I have done my research in South Orange County to see where there is a need for our second location. Not only have I been a part of the San Clemente community for a few years now, but the demand for a new and different choice of daycare / preschool for families living in the coastal zone is very high. I have poured my heart and soul into our first school, and I can't wait to do the same here in San Clemente. This little building, 130 Avenida de Rosa, or Sarah, has this perfect charm and layout for our use, and I'm so excited to serve our community. The owner of the building fell in love with the idea because he actually attended a small schoolhouse his entire childhood and couldn't think of a better fit for his building. I ask that you please consider and approve my use to greater benefit the coastal zone in San Clemente. Thank you so much, Brittany and LaFontaine. And that concludes my presentation.
Okay, thank you, David. Let's see if anyone has questions. Let's start this time with Commissioner Blackwell. Do you have any questions for David?
Yes, thank you. Well, I appreciate this project, and I think true there's definitely a need here. But David, I drove by the property, and when I did, I threw it into Google Maps, and another little pin popped up on my map, and it said that there was an escrow business there now, operating at 130. Are you aware of a business in this building that's currently operating?
Per city records, that business license has lapsed.
Okay. So as far as we know, it's no longer in operation. Okay, gotcha. And we did receive a number of letters. There was one in particular one that I don't know, it's kind of that line between, what land use discussion and non-land use discussion, but I think maybe Mel could weigh in on this as well if you cannot. I did notice one letter that had identified a situation where there's a registered sex offender within, I think, 500 feet along the same street, maybe 4 or 5 doors down. And I don't know, every offender would have their own set of conditions and, whatever their punishment was. But I have some recollection of that, and they're not supposed to be near, certain sensitive uses, et cetera. How does that play in here? And it becomes like a reverse situation if they're not allowed to reside within X amount of feet from a sensitive use like this for their children or what have you. How does it work if that sensitive use decides to appear within that buffer zone? Would it force that person to to relocate basically? how does that apply here? Is it something that we need to be silent on? Is it something that we should address? But it did show up in a letter, and I thought I'd bring it up for discussion.
Yeah, this is David Carrillo. Was that Mel? Oh, sorry. Yeah, this is David Carrillo. That's a good question, Blackwell, and it was brought up to my attention after the staff report was published on our website. So I was not aware of that. And also I'm asking the same questions here, and I think I'm not an expert in this part of the law, but I believe that the sex offender, I'm thinking will probably have to reside elsewhere. I'm not sure. I'll look to Mel for help on this one, but that's my thought. And I do have the same questions as you, Blackwell.
Yeah, this is Mel. This is the first that I've heard of this, so I have not looked into this. I certainly do not have more than very limited experience in this area, so we'd have to take a look at this to better understand what the rules are.
Okay. And just so you know, I did do, after reading that, I did utilize the state's maintenance law website, and I did, there is one noted. There's a person living at 146 Avenida Serra, which is 3 or 4 doors down the street, maybe 250 feet at most. So it's certainly something that, we should consider. I think it's an important thing. Okay, thanks, David. And those are all the questions I had, Jim.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Wu, any questions?
Yes, a few questions. First, for Mr. Carrillo, what is the building square footage?
Building square footage, let me get that to you.
Report says no increase, no change to the building, but it never specifies the number.
Yeah, I'm grabbing this square footage from attachment 2, Commissioner Wu, which is a staff report for the conditional use permit that was previously approved. So based on this, square footage is 1,135 square feet.
Okay. So what is the indoor activity area after excluding the kitchen and the bathrooms and the utility?
The square footage that the applicant is presenting is 1,073 square feet.
1017?
1,073, yes, 1073.
Okay. All right, thank you. Another question, maybe it's for Mel, for the attorney. The applicant sent in a letter disagreeing with many conditions. Some of them are standard conditions. Now, in that case, is this project ready to be discussed? And because it's not just one condition or two, there are a lot of them.
Yes, this is Mal. So the applicant agreeing with conditions or even with staff's recommendation is not a prerequisite to bringing a project forward to the Planning Commission. In fact, an applicant can request that their project be brought forward even if, for example, staff were to recommend not approving. So there is no prerequisite for agreement by the applicant. The legal standard for conditions is that they have an essential nexus to the impacts being mitigated under the Nolan-Dolan cases. If we're dealing here with standard conditions, those are almost necessarily going to have that essential nexus. But yeah, there is no requirement that they acquiesce to all conditions in order for this to be brought forward to the Planning Commission.
Okay, thank you. Another question is, since the applicant has no opportunity to speak to this commission, can this commission deny a project like that?
Well, ideally, they would have an opportunity to speak. We are in a different time right now with the COVID-19 pandemic and the different rules that the governor has put in place governing meetings like this under the Brown Act. But the ideal, like you say, would be to have everybody in the same room, able to make eye contact and to speak. That, of course, is not the rules that we're operating under currently.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Brown.
No, I've reviewed the project, walked the property. I think I've meeting with you, David, about the different address differences. And so, and I did notice, I read all the emails that came today. Of course, the one about the sex center close by is a surprise at this late hour. I do know the young lady's been working over a year on this. I guess she appears to be frustrated with the process of learning and trying to set up a school. But overall, I'm supportive of the concept of the project. I think David has done a great job along with DMT to try to get everything under one roof here and get your hands around everything. And so I'm pretty well comfortable with the project going forward. Thank you.
Commissioner Crandall, any questions for staff?
Not at this time. If one comes up during discussion, I'll raise it then.
Okay. I have a couple of questions. One is probably just based on my disbelief that we may actually be overparked someplace in the city. I just want to make sure, again, that this parking lot doesn't have any connection. It's not needed for the parking requirements of Old City Plaza. Is that correct, David?
David Creel here. That is correct, Commissioner Rulin.
Okay, except for the outlet mall, that'd be maybe the only time I've seen that in 10 years. So I wanted to make sure. Thank you. Let's see. I also had a question, and this might be for Mal as well. We've had a couple daycare applications come before us over the years, and there are some aspects of daycare that people are allowed to do by right. You know, for instance, they could do daycare out of their home for, X number of children. So I wanted to see if there was anything like that we needed to be aware of, that there was anything by right that they're allowed to do, as long as we have, reasonable conditions or anything like that we need to be concerned about in terms of a constraint on causing us to approve. So David or Mal, do either of you have any insight into that?
Yeah, David Korea here. I'll go ahead and start first here. We do define three types of daycares. One is the one that's before you tonight, daycare center. And then we have a large family daycare home and a small family daycare home. Now, per state, when you have a daycare home, whether it's large or small, cities are required to treat them as single-family homes. So in this case, since the operator is not residing on site, they're not deemed a daycare home, so they wouldn't fall under that exception or benefit of being treated as a single-family home.
Okay, good. So there's no state requirement of having a daycare by right because it's not a single-family home.
If it's being operated as a daycare center, per our definition, without the operator living on site. So there are two things that don't qualify to be that. One is the number of children, right? These guys are proposing 30 children, and then they're also not residing on site.
Okay, very good. I also noticed there's an open driveway on the property. I'm imagining that a number of people wanting to drop off might want to use that driveway for convenience. Are there any plans in terms of restricting using that driveway for drop-off, or a way to prevent people from using it for drop-off that's planned for this site?
Yeah, so that was, we did spend a good amount of time talking to the applicant about that concern. So there is a landscape planter box that's being proposed on the driveway that would help keep any vehicles from entering that space right there. And also, it's important to block that since there's an accessible path of travel that will go through there.
Okay, so I guess I was looking on the plans. I thought the box was off to the side of the driveway, but you're saying it's actually going to physically block the driveway from any cars being able to enter.
Yes, I believe I understand you. And it's actually very small. The plans are pretty small in how they identify the landscape planter box, but it is there. I can refer to it here. Let's see. If you go to attachment 12, attachment 12, sheet A091. It's keynote 33.
I'm seeing. I missed it now. I was looking at the larger planner just above it. So yeah, I see note 33. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
That answers my question. Okay, that is all the questions I had. Are there any remaining questions for staff at this time? And I will open up the public hearing and ask Gabriel. I know we've got some letters, so if you would like to read through those so they're entered into the public record.
Chairman, this is Commissioner Brown. I've read all the letters that were electronically forwarded to me, and I just checked my iPad. I don't think anything has recently been forwarded to me, so I've read them all.
All right. We were talking that this might be a procedure that we need to do, so I'm going to check again with Gabriel. Are you still there, Gabriel? Did we lose you? Gabriel?
Chairman, I'm sorry about that. I actually pressed the wrong button, which disconnected me from the call. I apologize.
I knew one of us was going to do it. I'm glad you did it instead of me. So.
Sorry about that.
I'm opening the public hearing, and I know all the commissioners have read all the letters that have come in. I know we talked about this a little bit. Is it necessary to read them as part of the public hearing? I mean, that's fine, but I'll leave that to you since you know the more the administrative procedure of this new world than I do.
Yeah, and I've talked over this with Mel earlier. The City Council is reading all the comments that they receive live, and that may be due to the public not being able to make their comments at the meeting live on video. So we thought it'd be appropriate to take that same approach at the Plan Commission.
Okay, then I'll turn it over to you I'm sorry, did I interrupt you?
No, so I think that definitely is up to the Plan Commission, but we do recommend it.
Okay, well,
as a public hearing and pursuant to the agenda language, we actually should read the comments, although as the agenda states, we can limit the time for each comment to 3 minutes, which we would do also for verbal comments. So if an email is, extensive, a 6-minute comment, for example, we can cut that off at 3 minutes.
Very good. Let's do that then. Let's go through each of these and give a limit of 3 minutes. And do we have someone who can time this?
Yeah, I can time it as well.
They're all pretty short.
Very good.
The one that came in at 6:15 and this evening, though, is pretty disturbing.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and have Gabrielle read through these.
Okay. All right. Received this letter May 19th. It says, to whom it may concern, as a current applicant for my business, New Thought Montessori to open in San Clemente at 130 Avenida Sarah, I'd like to address some information that was brought to my attention. David, did you read this one already? Excuse me. David, are you on mute?
Sorry, I'm mute. No, I did not.
Okay, so I'll read this one then. So as a current applicant for my business, New Thought Montessori to open in San Clemente at 130 Avenida Sarah, I would like to address some information that was brought to my attention. The Planning Commission for the City of San Clemente includes a staff member, Christopher Kaczynski, who represents a conflict of interest for New Thought Montessori application and approval. Christopher Kaczynski is the owner of a competing business, the Gratitude Garden Preschool. He is the director of operations for this daycare. And, let me see, I just lost my place. And admire and respect their, give me a second. He's the director of operations for the daycare. As I have no issues with the daycare, admire and respect their programs, this can pose an opposition in professionalism and integrity on the city side. Not only does being the owner of the same business stand in the way, but I, Brittany Fontaine, have been personally approached by the Gratitude Garden Preschool Director, Dustin Ray, Christopher Kaczynski's wife. I was contacted by the Gratitude Garden very shortly after my first visit to the planning calendar at the City of San Clemente to discuss the idea of New Thought Montessori. The Gratitude Garden Director, Dustin Ray, showed a particular interest in New Thought Montessori program and how it is run, asking for their directors to come observe. After explaining how busy and crushed for time New Thought Montessori was and could not fit into the schedule, the Gratitude Garden proceeded to ask once more on April 8, 2019. New Thought Montessori has emailed city planners on April 4, 2019, notifying them at the beginning of the application process. This will not be an issue for me as long as I have the support and approval from the Plan Commission without invasive and unfair conditions for use. If approval is not granted, this conflict of interest will unfortunately need to be addressed. Thank you, Brittany LaFontaine, New Thought Montessori. And go to the next comment that we received, May 20th. Good evening. First, I want to start off. By saying thank you for taking this time to review my project, and I am so grateful to finally be in this position. I've worked diligently since April 2019 to get all of this information to you and satisfy the planning department.
Gabriel? Excuse me, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I think this is the one that David has already read into the record, if I'm not mistaken, David.
This is David. Yes, that's correct. I already read that.
Okay.
Okay, so we can go to the next one.
Next one then. This one is dated May 16th. Dear Plan Commission representatives, the following correspondence is in regards to the city's notice of public hearing for a conditional use permit for a proposed daycare center known as the New Thought Montessori. We own the 3-unit apartment building at 128 Avenida Sarah, which abuts 132 Avenida Sarah. Due to the many reasons listed below, we strongly oppose the approval of a conditional use permit for this daycare center as following. Public safety, number one, a registered sex offender resides less than 1/10 of a mile from the 132 Avenida Sarah address. To have a daycare center less than 1/2 mile from a registered sex offender is in violation of California law W&I Code 6608.5 F 2005 and Penal Code 3003 AB 2005. Please see attached. Tenants' rights to quiet enjoyment noise, California Civil Code 1927, essentially states that there is in every rental agreement an obligation by the landlord to provide the tenant with quiet enjoyment and not disturb the tenant. The landlord who does not provide the tenant with quiet enjoyment under Civil Code 1927 subject himself to liability. The proposed daycare center is less than 5 feet and as far as 15 feet from 7 bedrooms at 128 Avenida Serra. The daycare center will have substantial noise emanating from it, such as yelling, screaming, loud playground noises, bathroom usage, door slamming, etc., and will severely impact the peaceful and quiet environment due to residents. According to California noise law, Health and Safety Code 46000F, tenants are entitled to a peaceful and quiet environment, some of which work at home at the same hours as the proposed hours of operation, from 7:30 a.m. to 5:30 p.m., 7 days a week. Installing a noise-aware devices and field sound transmission Class 22 rating fence is not sufficient enough to keep the noise levels under tolerable nuisance amount. Parking: due to the scarcity of available vehicle parking at Avenida Miramar and Avenida Serra, the addition of a daycare center will increase exponentially available street parking. The addition of the 8 parking spaces agreement with the old plaza owner, an ADA ramp with decreased substantial available parking. A waiver from the current downtown parking arrangement should not be granted. This taking away of available parking at Avenida Miramar will have a ripple effect back onto Avenida Serra and Avenida Polizada streets. Traffic congestion, number 4, with addition of upwards of 60 vehicles a day attributed to the daycare center at 127 Avenida Miramar parking lot, the potential for an increase in the number of traffic accidents may occur. Additionally, children being dropped off and picked up on Avenida Serra may also create an environment for traffic accidents. Number 5, construction nuisances. Many disturbances to the tenants and neighborhood will occur due to the construction of the parking lot ramp, grading, parking stalls, and other site improvements that could potentially affect the resident, tenants, and surrounding neighbors' health and tranquility at 128 Avenida Serra, such as noise, dust, and other nuisances. Thank you for your time to consider many of the negative aspects the daycare center will create. It is incompatible with the neighborhood, and other more suitable locations should be considered. Please decline this permit request. Feel free to contact me if you have any questions or comments. Thank you, Reese Udall, trustee. Okay. Next comment is from Tom Brote. The comment states, was recently informed that a permit was requested to place a child care at the property of 130 Avenida Serra. I'm the owner of 122 Avenida Serra and think this is a very bad idea. Not only is the area extremely dense and is with very little parking, the area is not exactly safe for 30 children with only 3 caretakers. The Old City Plaza parking lot frequently has homeless, people living in their cars, and kids smoking pot in it. The police refused to do anything when called, and now we want to have 30 children around that. This neighborhood is already very crowded and does not seem appropriate to subject it to increased traffic, noise, parking issues, and the likes. Please feel free to reach out with any questions for me. Tommy Brote. Next comment we received. Hello, Scott and City of San Clemente. I am writing to express my grave concerns over the planned proposal for 130 Avenida Serra. I'm the direct neighbor at 128 Avenida Serra and run a small business out of my spare bedroom. The noise of 30 children 365 days a year would be detrimental to the operations of my business and thus impact my ability to make income. I moved here specifically for the lack of loud daytime neighbors, and this noise would affect not just my business, but that of my downstairs neighbor as well. Due to COVID-19, so many of us have been forced to work from home and figure out how to make ends meet. The noise will force us out of jobs. Another alarming concern is traffic and parking. There is not enough street parking to accommodate the residents of the street, and this is before the rush of summer crowds. There is no way our street or Miramar could handle the influx of cars. We residents already have trouble parking as is, and traffic on this street can get sketchy at best. The amount of cars that fly through the street, specifically at the top of the hill where the proposed Montessori would be, is too much. Personally, I would not feel comfortable dropping my child off at this location. There are also issues of public safety. There are 2 bars within 500 feet of the proposed school for children. Both bars serve food, meaning they openly serve food, both food and alcohol starting at 10 a.m. Again, the risk for both the children and the bar patrons just doesn't make sense or seem in the best interest of the community. On Miramar is Old Town San Clemente, which is filled with some interesting San Clemente characters. Would parents feel comfortable knowing their children are sandwiched between drunk adults and homeless people? I'm sure there are other options available that are not in such close proximity to bars. And finally, the construction. As stated above, the noise will be detrimental to the operations of my business. There already is construction a few houses down, and it's been challenging having to navigate that noise as is. The construction has been going on for almost a year now, so my faith is in the city to expedite construction, get this project done in a timely manner is low. This is not what residents of Avenida Serra want. This is not what I want as a direct neighbor to the proposed site. This will impact my business and my way of making a living negatively. I implore you to consider other alternatives that don't impact local residents and business owners of San Clemente. Best, A.S.H. McAdams, Entrepreneur Leadership Coach. All right. Next comment we received from May 20th. So, dear sirs, as the owners of 137 Avenida Serra, we oppose the conditional use permit for the New Thought Montessori Daycare Center at 130 Avenida Serra. As a residential neighbor that is already impacted by traffic and parking issues, this would add to the existing congestion. Having 30 children and 3 staff members present and operating 365 days a year would disturb the peace and quiet enjoyment of all the residents in the immediate area. Please deny the conditional use permit application. Thank you, Ronald Stewart and Mary Stewart. Next comment is received May 20th. Dear sir, I would like to voice my concern over the proposed daycare center at 130 Avenida Serra, San Clemente. I understand that the neighbor is zoned for apartments, homes, and small businesses, but I do not believe that a business which would have the potential of 33 people in it at a time is small. I currently live next door at 128 Avenida Serra and have for the past 4 years. I have numerous concerns. Noise with operating hours of 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. as other daycare centers are. The noise level at a time when many people are sleeping would be excessive. Our building is about 4 feet away, and all of the bedrooms and windows face the west. Currently, I'm a special education teacher that is conducting all of my lessons at home due to the emergency health situation, and my maybe continuing this into the indefinite future. Even with all the windows closed, I can still hear the gardeners and maintenance men working on the house every weekend. Traffic, parking, and public safety on Avenida Serra. It is a small residential neighborhood with very limited parking. We have parking in our driveway, but most street parking is occupied by people visiting the shops, restaurants, and El Camino Real. There is a small parking lot behind us that is supposed to be used only by the old city plaza, but since there is no security maintenance of the lot, many are using it for a long time in abandoned vehicles. There would be no safe place to drop off or pick up large amount of students without double parking in the street, blocking traffic. Construction nuisance to make updates on a house and property to make it accessible to this large amount of people in and out of it daily. The construction will be continuous and a nuisance for the next few months. And again, being a distance learning teacher who does teach extended school year throughout the summer months, this would be a disturbance to me and my students. I thank you for your time and consideration. Michelle Browersma, in the 128 Avenida Serra, Unit A, San Clemente. The next comment we received, May 20th, says, hello. I received a notice of public hearing for a daycare center at 130 Avenida Serra. I strongly oppose this daycare center. The noise, traffic, congestion it will cause, parking, which is already an issue, and safety of children will be intolerable. With the new COVID restrictions, trying to work from home will be almost impossible with all the noise from daycare. I'm attaching a photo which will show the close proximity from my bedroom and the living room to the proposed daycare center. Regards, Anna Burleson, 128 Avenida Serra. And a photo is attached with that. The next comment we received on May 14th, Dear Plan Commissioners or Plan Commission members, my name is Daniel Stewart. My wife Robin and I own property at 130 Avenue Sarah. My tenant, Brittany LaFontaine, has been attempting to obtain a conditional use permit for her New Thought Montessori School at her property since her first CUP submittal in May of last year. She was navigating the requirements and city process as well as putting together drawings for several months before that. Originally, she was given fairly positive feedback from city planning, and they said it was just a matter of going through the process, which might take around 3 months. From that point on, hurdle after another was placed in front of her. To make matters more frustrating, the requirements were brought up one at a time instead of being given a complete list from the beginning. So at any point, she didn't know if the project was able to be approved. Brittany patiently persevered through all of this for over a year, having to hire an expediter to navigate the process and having to pay rent to hold the property until approval before getting any cash flow from the functioning school. Many times she was in tears dealing with the continual additional requirements and uncertainty of the approval. I just wanted to express my support of the project and emphasize how frustrating the process has been for everyone involved. It should not take a full year to go through the CUP process for a positive project that provides the needed function in the city. I wanted to make sure that this was the final step in this process. Another project is approved so Brittany's Montessori School can start providing an extremely necessary community function of child care. Thank you for your time, Daniel Stewart. And then I believe this is the last comment received May 20th. I know it is late, but I hope you get this email before the hearing. I have lived on Avenue Sarah for over 25 years, and my father grew up in this house. We have a long history here. I'm against the school for many reasons. Parking is ridiculous for residents. However, my main concern is the registered sex offender just a few doors away from the proposed school. I know him, and he's creepy. He lives across from my residence. His arrest was for a very bad offense. He was over the age of 40 when he forced himself on someone under 14. He tries to talk to every woman who walks by this house. It's just not right to allow school here. I can think of many places, many in the industrial area. Thank you. And that is the end of the comments that we received.
Okay, thank you. So I will close the public comment section and open Planning Commission discussion. Maybe I'll take a moment of privilege here and outline a concern that I think I have, and it sounds like perhaps other planning commissioners have. First, there's kind of the recent knowledge that there's a registered sex offender in the neighborhood. We don't know what that means one way or another in terms of the daycare center and in terms of state law and such, and it sounds like we would be prudent to understand what that means. But we also did receive a letter from the applicant late today with a number of conditions that the applicant said that they either did not agree with or they wanted some change to, such as they would only agree to it if something could be handled over the counter. And I don't think that we can guarantee that some action can necessarily be handled over the counter or not. As we know, these conditions are in place so that we can make the findings. And if we don't have the appropriate conditions in place, particularly the standard conditions, we can't make the findings. And of course, Mal also gave his opinion on it as well. I suspect that this emerges from frustration, and that's certainly understandable. But I wouldn't want, after a lot of work done by an applicant, I wouldn't want a moment's frustration to negatively affect their application. So one thought I have is that maybe an appropriate move here might be to continue this item so that staff and the applicant can discuss the applicant's objections to the conditions and, come to an understanding, resolve, what these are. I hate potentially adding time to the applicant's, the time that the applicant has spent on this, but I know that I would have a difficult time, regardless of any other merits of the application, I personally would have a difficult time voting for an application where we couldn't count on the applicant to follow the conditions that are necessary in order to make the findings. So I'm interested in hearing, of course, what all the other planning commissioners think of that. And Mal, if you see that as a positive or not a positive move, if you want to chime in or not, that's, of course, as always, we'd love to hear your opinion.
Dear Ruling, this is Commissioner Wu. I like your idea to continue this item to next meeting. Although I'd like also to have this chance to talk about a few minor items. I believe before the next meeting, this item is brought back to the Planning Commission, but the applicant can work on those minor comments. At the same time, let the attorney to look into this sexual offender issue. And that's a deal breaker. I cannot vote for the project tonight because I don't know the ramification, the legal ramification of this thing. So I'd like to make a move to continue this item to the next meeting. But I'd like us to have a full discussion before we vote on that.
Yeah, well, let's hear what the other planning commissioners have to say, and Mal, if he wants to chime in as well.
Okay, this is Commissioner Brown. Okay. I can see
Brown.
Yeah, I can see the applicant's frustration here in our letter as far as all these conditions here. She's been as her friend across the street who's been around landlord has said she's apparently been frustrated with the process and somehow, it's taken a year when she started with 3 months and it's been a long, long journey. And then all of a sudden have the neighborhood come out of the woods like this is kind of tough too. These 2 pages here of the applicant's concerns on the various conditions, most of them can be really well disposed of tonight. I think she agrees with the off-site parking record, with guidance from the city. That parking lot's empty most of the day down there. So, it's very rarely used. I went down there 3 times. The applicant does 416. She'll install 1 noise advices. The noise thing, she makes a tough case on 416, and the other one, they're alarming to children, they're intrusive, and extreme invasion of privacy. And that's where the applicant's got to understand that she's not at a home anymore, not a resident, this is a business. And we've required noise meters before in other businesses. Go 2 blocks far to find. Boy, somebody's not on mute. That's for sure. But so they're. I'm sorry. She's going to disagree with that. But I think we got to make sure the noise meters are installed. The noise test by Dudek looks like very favorable, by the way. Most of the rest of the stuff, like she objects to the sidewalks. Well, she doesn't know. The owner of the building owns the sidewalks, and has to maintain it, and so she doesn't have any say on that. That's just the way it goes. Some of this other, like dot tolerant, she wants to agree to over-the-counter, and maybe we should condition it to make sure that the project planner that's brought her all the way here, David, takes it all the way to the end, and he's the over-the-counter guy is what I would propose. So I think a lot of this stuff can be handled tonight. The biggest issue, I think, we've got to deal with this is late arrival on the sex offender that lives 3 or 4 houses down the street. That's the only concern I have. But these 2 pages of concerns here, objections, or some of them can be handled very easily, and the other ones, with noise meters, she just has to make sure that she just does business that way, is my view. And that's all I have to say on this project.
Okay. Commissioner Crandall, do you have anything to add? Pardon me, we can't hear you.
Yes. Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes, thanks.
I'm a Verizon advertisement. I've got a lot of questions about the project, and it probably would be good to discuss them a little bit. but it's a difficult fit. It's going to require a lot of conditions of approval to work. If the applicant can live within those requirements, I think it can work. I mean, I'm appalled at the length of the process, and something's got to be done about that. And it may be that she wasn't aware of the process and may have been a little bit of her own worst enemy in running things through. And my question for David, is she actually proposing to operate for 365 days a year?
No, they do have, I think they provided a schedule in the staff report somewhere. I can try to look for it, but they're proposing to operate Monday through Friday, and they do have some temporary closures in the summer and winter. Yep.
So it's a basic work week. Okay.
Correct.
Is any lighting being proposed for the parking lot? Security lighting?
David Correa, no lighting is proposed.
Okay. The other thing I want you to be aware of, anytime we do a handicap ramp, look at doing some way to keep skateboarders off it. But my guess is that for a land use, it shouldn't be affected by the sex offender. He should, if a school goes in, he's got to move. It would be my guess. But I'm not ready to vote on that either until we get that finalized. You know, it shouldn't affect a business like this and the land use. So I would not be opposed to a continuance, but I think some discussion is beneficial. Okay, Michael?
Yes, I a lot of the same concerns that the other commissioners have shared. I think that there's still some potentially important bits of information that we should be privileged to before we make a big decision on this property. I just need one bit of clarification from David on the rules of, memory is not serving, and it could be in the report, but does the owner of the property need to be on the property for a daycare of this size? I recall something to that effect, but it appears that there's been discussion about the owner not residing on the property. What's the rule on that?
Yeah, for not in this case, not for this type of daycare. It would be a requirement if they were operating as a large or small daycare home. But this is not their intent. Their intent is to operate as a daycare center without them operating or residing on site. And also just given the number of children also doesn't qualify them as a daycare home.
I see. Okay, thank you. Well, so Commissioner Rowland, I too would be in favor of giving this one a little bit more time to cook before we look at it again.
Okay. Well, let me ask if there's any commissioners who want to have more questions, or want to make more comments or discussion about this before any kind of motion is made.
Jim, again.
Go ahead, Commissioner Crandall.
Yeah, David, we are granting them the ability to not use the parking on the site, and they are getting a parking agreement to replace that plus some off-site. Is that creating a legally non-conforming condition. So are we doing something that takes a conforming property and makes it legally non-conforming, or basically non-conforming?
This is David. I think it depends on how the use is operating. We'd be, I think, asking, is the use non-conforming? Because in this case, they're not proposing to provide parking on site, right? It's going to be off-site in order to meet parking requirements. I think there is the chance that it becomes non-conforming depending on how the use or the site is used in the future.
And is that consistent with the general plan? Doing something like that?
I believe the general plan calls that we don't worsen any non-conformity.
Very good. That was my question. You might have to address that the next time we hear this.
Chair Rowland, this is Gabriel Perez. I just want to remind you that I believe you opened the public hearing but did not close it. So if your intention is to close it, I just wanted to remind you.
I apologize. I thought I closed it. I will now officially close the public hearing. Thank you. Any other? So I think I heard Commissioner Brown.
Yeah, a couple of issues here, I guess. One thing, a shared parking agreement runs with the land. Is that correct, City Planner?
Yes, it will run with the land.
Does a city shared parking agreement run with the land? In other words, does it attach itself to the property? Or should we condition it that it's only valid as long as the school is there?
You know what, let me double check also with David. I believe they have to enter an agreement, and that's recorded with the county, right, on the property? David?
Yeah, that's part of the condition as well.
Pardon, can I say that again, please?
That it is as a condition, the off-site parking agreement is required to be first reviewed and approved by city attorney, and then recorded with county, and then once recorded with county, that a copy be provided to the city.
Okay, but so going forward, 5 years from now, the Montessori school goes out of business. But 130 or 132, whatever the real number is on Sarah, is that shared parking agreement still attached to that property, even though it's out of business? And the next applicant come in, has to come up with something. He has 8 parking spots to deal with for the little property there? Or should we condition it to that this shared agreement only runs with the Montessori school? Can we do that?
That's a good point, Commissioner.
What's the city attorney have to say about it?
This is Mel. Yes, you can include that language in the shared parking agreement, that if the use changes, excuse me, the agreement would terminate, and it can still be recorded against title, again with the understanding that a change in use would terminate the shared parking agreement.
Okay, and as to the other commissioners here, I guess the Chair Rowland, what additional time do we need for a continue? What does the staff have, or the applicant have to satisfy what we have before us here tonight? What do we need continued for another 2 weeks before we see this again? Exactly what is it that people have to go do before it comes back to us? That's what I want to know. Thank you.
In my mind, there's two things. This is Commissioner Rowland. In my mind, there's 2 things. One is understand what the repercussions are of the fact that there's a sex offender living on that street. But also we need to, I think the applicant and staff need to come to some understanding of the conditions of approval, what they're about, deal with these concerns with them. Because I think if staff comes to, we just found out about this, right before the meeting, really, is when we received this. I think if if staff comes to us and says, well, we've got these conditions of approval, but the applicant doesn't agree to some of them, but we need all these conditions of approval in order to make the finding, it's hard to make the finding then, right? It's hard to vote in favor of it. So what has to happen is that they have to go through these objections that the applicant has and come to some understanding between the applicant and staff. And if they can't come to an understanding, the staff may give a recommendation that we can't approve it. But I think, I don't think that that'll happen. I think that, there can be an accommodation or an understanding. Like I said, I suspect this is more out of frustration. But I'm happy to just continue this to our next meeting, the first week of June, I think, and 2 weeks from now, and we can pick it back up then and see how the situation moves.
So, Commissioner Wu, I have a few comments other than what I stated about continuation due to a sexual offender issue. Without that issue, this project for me is still a long stretch to support. I have a few concerns. None of them cannot be addressed, but it needs a lot of work. A few items. First item is the floor area. Activity area inside the building needs to be measured and indicated. It's easy to say, we'll let the state to verify those numbers, but we have the drawing and we know the state law, so we should exercise our due diligence and figure out a reasonable number to accommodate. I think 30 is probably high. I'm not sure if that meets the state requirements. That's number one. Number two is the accessibility and the pedestrian orientation. We're putting an automobile-oriented project in this mixed use, which is envisioned by our general plan to be a pedestrian-friendly zone. We'll have all the people to go into the parking lot and walk from the parking lot up a ramp into the rear entry of the building, and we'll basically block the front entry to everybody except for people with a disability. However, we do not have a connection from the public sidewalk to the front entry for disabled people. We have a driveway approach, but the sidewalk does not meet ADA requirements now. So, and the accessible route connects the two entries, front and back, to the parking lot. It's not connected to the public sidewalk. So what if someone who lives nearby and he or she just wants to walk her kids to the school? Does she have to walk through the public sidewalk, walk through the parking lot? It's not reasonable. We should let the front door to be open to people who are willing to walk in within walking distance. And California's accessibility law asks the path of travel, the accessible path of travel, to be 4 feet wide outdoor. And our ramp is not wide enough. It's 44 inch now. It needs to be 48 clear. And it needs to have a connection to the public sidewalk, which is just a few feet away. But we're not connecting them. We're putting a planter box to block that access. The planter box can be reduced in size to allow a 4 feet gap. But the driveway approach prevents a wheelchair to go through because it doesn't meet that crossbar requirement. So thirdly is the noise. The biggest opposition or biggest comments from the neighbors on the noise. And Applicant had the engineer to prepare a noise study, and everything is based on that claim, that single one claim or assertion that the solid wood fence or wood panel fence have a 12 decibel noise reduction. This is a huge stretch. I'll give you a few examples. Caltrain designed their freeways, and they have the berm on both sides of the freeway. Their design goal, 15 decibel reduction. Their sound wall, design goal, 15 decibel reduction. We're talking about a freeway scale and a solid walls. Recognize the solid wall doesn't help that much because most of the noise will travel by diffraction. It will reach the top of the wall and diffract downwards to the receiver. Here, we have a wood fence. Wood shrinks and expands based on the moisture content. Even if we put them tight together, in a year or two, you see gaps. We also have a door there. There's a little way to make it a solid wall. And I've seen a product, a sound fence. They are made of a solid wood panel with sound absorbing materials on both sides. And the claim, 4 to 12 decibels reduction. A couple of years ago, we reviewed a project by Copper Shores. They want to put a 8 feet CNU walls along El Camino Real to reduce the noise. Their acoustic engineers result, if it's 8 feet, it could achieve a noise reduction of 7 decibels. If it was 6 feet, it was 2 or 3 decibels. But I need to see a specific design of that fence to believe that this thing has 12 decibel noise reduction. Even if they had it, their neighbor may have a deck on the second level. In fact, the neighbor on the northeast side, they have a deck there, and the deck is on the second level, and the fence will not help a lot because they're high and they are within that line of sight from the noise source. So I don't feel that 12 decibel noise reduction is credible here. With all that said, those can be addressed, but it needs lots of engineering and work. Those are the things that I like the applicant to take the time to work with his or her consultant. And I also would like the applicant to work with the staff on the conditions. Standard conditions, they're not allowed to negotiate about standard conditions. And I'm very reluctant to take any of them out. I understand that the letters are the frustration, and once the applicant calms down, maybe she's more willing to work with the staff. But I need this disagreement on conditions to be reduced substantially. And we can talk about a few disagreement on conditions too, but not a blanket, a lot of those disagreements. And it makes it difficult to the chair said, to make those findings. So that's my comments on this project. By the way, I like Montessori. I think every time the city has an opportunity to have a different or better educational opportunities for our residents, I welcome them. But we also need to make those findings. And so I would say good luck to the applicant and welcome to come back.
Okay. I will say, from my perspective, we need more daycare. It's good to have daycare in a residential neighborhood, especially when it's a little more dense so that people can get to it. They can serve the community. That part is very good. But I think, as Bart said, there are times when a use is overall looks generally like it fits in the category, in this case a mixed-use area, but just the nature of the site, makes it difficult, and that's why we have conditional use permits and why we have conditions to try to take everyone's interests and needs into account. Probably my biggest concern is still the noise, even if they're only at 55 decibels at the property line. That's our city ordinance, but it's still a bit loud, and if people are going to need to deal with that, 3 or 4 times a day, 5 days a week, that's something that has to be considered, and the impact on the neighbors in the neighborhood does need to be dealt with. So even with the sound report, I still have some concern with the noise. I would like to see what we could do to address that a little more solidly. It sounds like the applicant, at least from the letter we got today, the applicant is essentially asking for a condition where we prevent ourselves from enforcing the noise ordinance in the city, which, of course, I don't think that's something that we can agree to. It's just it's just a tough fight, is what it really amounts to, and there can be some frustration with that, unfortunately. So, that would be my preference would be to continue this, see if some things can't be worked out. The applicant's heard a lot of what we have to say, so has a sense of, when this comes back to us, has a sense of, where we are with that, which hopefully will be of some benefit in further discussions with staff. And that's basically my perspective on it at this point. Does anyone else have more they want to say on this matter?
Commissioner Brown, I have a comment.
Please.
Yeah, if you look at page 76 of the report, it's the noise report for Dudek, and there's a complete table in there of all the noise measurements and where they took them. And basically they state that the whole playground area complies with the city's noise standards. So, and there's about 12 measurements they took, including the children on top of the little playground effort, the geodetical noise, playground effort and all that. So they're saying, based on their measurements, the data shows that they meet the city noise requirements. I just want to add that to the conversation here. That's enough. Thank you.
Any other comments on this issue? If not, is someone interested in making a motion?
Commissioner Wu, I move to continue this item to next planning commission meeting on June 3rd. Gabriel, can you confirm that?
The next meeting is, this is Gabriel Perez, next meeting is June 3rd. One of the caveats I want to put out there to the Planning Commission is we have a very full agenda where we have advertised public hearings starting at 7 o'clock. So, I don't know if we could talk about this at the end of the meeting, is maybe even considered, since this one's already advertised for today, we don't have to advertise again, but if we continue it, maybe we start the regular meeting earlier, so make sure that we have time to cover all items.
Okay, let's talk about that in the reports.
We can either continue to the 17th, or we can continue on the 3rd again, depending on if it's ready or not.
There's no meeting on the 17th, I don't think. So, unfortunately, I think we only have one meeting in June. So, I think the applicant's been waiting a while, so I'd like to get this done, for the applicant as soon as we can. I think that, we should be sensitive to that as best we can. So, there's a motion to continue this to our June 3rd meeting. Is there a second?
Blackwell, second.
Commissioner Blackwell seconds. All right, we'll do the roll call. Commissioner Wu.
Aye.
Commissioner Brown.
Oppose.
Commissioner Crandall.
Opposed.
Yeah, you may be on the opposed. Commissioner Blackwell.
Yep.
And Commissioner Grulin votes aye. That is 3 in favor of continuing and 2 opposed, so the motion passes. And we will continue that to our June 3rd meeting. All right. Our next on our agenda is new business. Item 9, we have no new business. Item 10, excuse me, let me ask, is there any new business? Beg your pardon. Okay, hearing none, we have no old business. And item 11 is reports of commissioners and staff. Does anyone have any reports?
Chair, this is Commissioner Wu. Yes, I do have one. I talked to a citizen, about, the citizen approached me to talk about tinting Southeast El Caminos at Santiago project. We reviewed it. I believe it was 2015. It's a multi-family condominium building, or it's a mixed use with some commercial on the ground level, and the condos on top. There was a lot of discussion, I'd say a very vigorous debate about that project. It's being completed, and the citizens' recommendation is perhaps the Planning Commission can take a look at and review the process, or review this whole project, and to see if there's any lessons to be learned or experience to be gained to help the revitalization of South El Camino. And I wonder if the city planner can, I don't know, this is COVID-19 a little different. If this if we can have some form of discussion or review. South El Camino Real is an area that the city would like to revitalize. And we've seen some projects, but perhaps we can have more. And as everything is tied to how tight we control the development, do we need to relax them a little bit, or do we need to continue? What refinement can we do to achieve a better process or revitalization efforts along that corridor, tying to that a bigger scheme? So I'd like to have the city planner to think about this one, and perhaps we can learn something for the future.
I'd like to chime in on. I'd like to pile in on there and support. Commissioner Brown. I'd like to support Commissioner Wu's thrust there to try to, what are we doing about South El Camino Real? I do know that the property owner of the abandoned gas station there in Valencia and El Camino Real, that little property was left out of our general plan. In other words, it's still neighborhood commercial, and everything else right across the street and up the block is mixed use. And I think that's a property we left out of the zones for all that general plan work we did. I know we have a general plan cleanup thing going there, city planner, but it may be time to reach out to look at that property and reconsider designating it from neighborhood commercial to mixed use, and that maybe that abandoned gas station that's been there for 40 years could be repurposed with the owner of the site. I don't know if you've reached out to the owner, but we do have that opportunity to maybe change the zoning going to this general plan cleanup you have approved in City Council. By looking at that one property, I think we inadvertently left out of our entire general plan deliberations. But I think Commissioner Wu has a very good point there to what's going on with some of the properties down there. We put a ton of effort into North Beach, but it's time to look at South El Camino. I commend Commissioner Wu for bringing that up. That's enough.
Well, if we look at that, we may want to start with a review of the South El Camino Real focus area from the general plan, and even from the the envisioning document. Just as a place to start.
Good point.
Yeah, thank you, commissioners. If you give me some time to think about how that might be best approached with the Planning Commission. But just to respond to that, we do get a lot of interest and have interested parties that are interested in redeveloping properties on El Camino Real in that area. And so we do have a pre-application request for a hotel with combination condominium retail multi-story, that's proposed. So there is interest there, and it would actually encompass an entire block of the El Camino Real. There is interest in developing the gas station, the site that's abandoned. There's a lot of constraints on that site based on the size and where the location is in proximity to the freeway entrance. So that's a big constraint there. So we'll think about how to best present that to Planning Commission, and when we figure that out, we will schedule that for the agenda.
And, as part of that, this is Commissioner Ruin, as part of that, Gabriel, there was a little work done, some nice work done by some students, I think from UC Irvine or Cal Poly. The work done for the city, and it was probably, 5, 6, 7 years ago, that was presented to the Planning Commission at the time, some interesting conceptual ideas of improving South El Camino Real. So I'm sure those materials are around somewhere, and that may be another thing to sort of, bring out and discuss for, we kind of have a new generation of planning commission since then. So I think some people haven't seen that. So that might be something to reference as well.
Thank you.
Mr. Commissioner Wu, thank you all for the comments. I remember on that 1010 South El Camino Real project at Santiago, there was a lot of discussion about the building height. Also, the city council took out the individual parking garage out of that application to make them common shared parking. And I wonder how that will work and if they work.
Okay. I would also like to point the commission at an item that's in your section on what's commissioners and staff. It's actually agenda item 11D. It's something I asked Gabriel to put together. We've gone through a lot of flips and twists with our STLUs over the years, and recently there was a new ordinance adopted based on, I believe it was based on a lawsuit. And since we've worked on this so much in the past, and this kind of happened a little outside of our view, I asked him to provide some insight to us on, what the recent changes were and that sort of a thing. So it's just a report of a couple of pages that you might want to take the time to look at to kind of get an update on what the latest of what's going on with the STLUs. Gabriel, I didn't know if you wanted to say anything about it or not, but if you do, feel free.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman Rulin and Commission. Yeah, I prepared this update. I know the Chairman had brought up there was a settlement agreement that was entered into between the city and a group called the Coastal Access Alliance. So the settlement agreement would allow opportunity for some former STLU operators, and under the settlement agreement, they'd be considered qualified STLU operators as long as they meet certain criteria that is outlined in this report that I prepared. We expect it might apply to up to 20 previous operators in areas that are identified in the exhibit, and that would be in the Montalvo, Lobiero, and the Buena Vista allowed STLU areas. So what it would allow for is an extended amortization period of all the way up to the date of May 17, 2026. But those potential eligible STLU operators that would be qualified, they would have to apply through the city. We are preparing an application for those eligible operators, so they would have to apply. It would be a staff process to evaluate if they are eligible according to the settlement agreement. And they have, I believe it's a period of 30 days to be able to submit an application, and then we would make a decision at the staff level. But that was the purpose of the update. Happy to answer any questions that you might have. But we don't have an application out yet. It will be prepared. We expect it to be published to the city website on the STLU page sometime next week.
This is Mr. Brown. Thanks for bringing it up, Jim. Is it, to you, Gabriel, actually now is the time to review there was 3 ordinances all together with, vacation rental, short-term rental, and then sober living homes, and on top of that, a boarding house ordinance. And all 3 of those kind of played together. And in light of certain lawsuit court decisions with Costa Mesa on sober living homes, and the current 2 lawsuits now that have been settled by the city as far as vacation rentals, is it time to revisit now the entire triumvirate of these 3 ordinances that we passed 3 or 4 years ago?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't think that we're at that point yet. I think it's important for us to let these agreements play out. We're actually in a really good place right now when it comes to the Coastal Commission and STOUs, and certainly addiction recovery centers. So I think it's important, again, that we let these things play out, give it some time. When it is time for us to revisit that pursuant to the settlement agreements, we can bring that back to the commission. But as of now, the city's in a really, really good position in terms of these uses.
Okay, the same with the sober living homes. There's been some pretty dramatic court decisions lately with Costa Mesa that would be in our favor to update that part of the ordinance, but you say don't do anything with that right now either?
Yeah, so the decisions in Costa Mesa have not been appealed all the way up, and they are expected to be appealed. So we don't expect anything final in the Costa Mesa case for quite some time. They have lower court rulings, but those are going to be appealed.
All right, thank you.
All right, any other reports of commissioners and staff? All right, very good. I will say, everybody, I know these are long meetings because of our administration and the new logistics that we have to do. These can be kind of tough, and we've got more friction. So I really appreciate your flexibility and patience, and I'm certainly interested in hearing any recommendations you have on how we or how I can run these meetings a little more efficiently or a little more smoothly using this new format. And with that, I will entertain the motion for adjournment.
I'll make a motion.
Chairman,
I'm
sorry, Mal, go ahead.
This is Gabriel Perez.
Sorry.
Just want to mention that considering we do have, I believe we have about 4 public hearing items that were already scheduled. If we did continue this item today on the Montessori school, we can't do anything about the time when we hear those other items, because those are supposed to be heard sometime at 7 or afterwards. But this item wouldn't be subject to that, so maybe it might be a good time to consider an earlier start time for the actual regular meeting, which means we would have to push up the study session to an earlier time in the day.
So we have a study session?
We have a planned study session at 6 o'clock, and so the other option is not to have the study session at that time and postpone the study session for another date. But it is the lot consolidation session. Remember the ordinance that we first presented at the study session a few meetings ago.
Do you want to start the meeting at 5?
I think that would be advisable for as far as the study session, and then move the regular meeting to 6 o'clock. And based on the level of discussion on the school today, I assume there's going to be considerable discussion to maybe even up to 7 o'clock.
The time is fine with me, because I will probably need to recuse from the lot merge ordinance discussion. But let's see what the majority of people want to do. Does anyone object to starting the study session at 5?
It's fine with me.
I'm open. This is Commissioner Wu.
Yeah, I'm open.
I'm fine with that.
Mr. Colonel's open.
All right, so let's do that, Gabriel. Let's just start the study session at 5 and the regular meeting at 6 in 2 weeks, if we can get away with that.
Okay. I'll move that we adjourn to the next regular meeting of the Study Session and Planning Commission that will be held on 3 June 2020 at 5 p.m. in Council Chambers, 100 Avenida Presidio, San Clemente, California.
Commissioner Crandall, second.
Brown. Second by Crandall. Call the roll. Commissioner Wu?
Aye.
Commissioner Brown?
Aye.
Commissioner Crandall?
Aye.
Commissioner Blackwell?
Aye.
And Commissioner Wu votes aye. It's unanimous and we are adjourned.